Now I'm here with Brandon Robinson. He is the president and CEO of Tipsy Putt, a.k.a. Flat Stick Pub. Now, Brandon, or excuse me, yes, Brandon. Okay, I had Blair on earlier today for a different podcast. So you were the founder of Skin, Body, and Soul Med Spa, and you own something called LMONS Investment, and now you're the founder of Flat Stick Pub here in downtown Sacramento.
Yeah. So
a lot of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. My hands are in a lot of things. Let me just clarify something.
Yeah.
I'm not the founder of Flat Stick Pub.
Okay, thank you.
I am the licensee of Flat Stick Pub in Northern California.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just want to clarify that for everybody.
I think that's important. This is the newest thing in drinkotainment is how I've referred to you in the past. You're right there near Golden One. A lot of activity. You've been open 7 or 8 days.
Yep.
Talk to us about this venture.
Well, so in April 2017, I was up in Bellevue, Washington. I was opening our 5th and newest Skin Body Soul location. And I took the staff out after our grand opening event. And ironically, my director of marketing, Carly, and my wife and my construction manager from Skin Body Soul, all from Sacramento, all Sacramento residents, were all with us. And we went down to Flat Stick Pub in downtown Kirkland. We just stumbled upon this place. And the minute I walked in, I knew it was something special. I knew it was something like, there's something magical about this place, the grain to glass concept. And all of us looked at each other and said, we need to bring this to Sacramento. There's got to be something like this. I mean, Punch Bowl Social has bowling. I've seen bowling done a million times with Lucky Strike. And it's a dime a dozen in the bowl. Pins is another brand. But no one's done it with mini golf. And I was so intrigued by that. And I was also intrigued by just the atmosphere and what they were doing. And so we ended up getting into agreement with them, and the rest is history.
So mini golf meets what? But food, drink.
Yeah.
It's like an environment that is kind of electric. I was over there on one of the opening nights, and it's an electric atmosphere.
It is an electric. It's really fun. It is a drinkertainment venue. It's 21 and over. It's a full restaurant, but it also encompasses 40 taps of beer, all from local independent brewers in Northern California. Actually, I shouldn't even say that. Sacramento, California,
and
primarily.
You had Big Sexy Brewing in there, didn't you?
Of course we had Big Sexy.
They sponsor a few of our events. I love Big Sexy. So anyway, so it's beer, it's food, it's golf. And as you think about
it's
games. Okay.
Yep.
So what are the games? So you get these games, and it's kind of there's a membership associated with it. Am I right?
Yeah. So that's another cool concept about Flat Stick Pub is that they have these memberships, and you can join, and it's a lifetime membership. And for $95, you get unlimited golf and games for life, and which is an incredible deal. You also get a T-shirt.
$95. What do I get?
You get unlimited golf for life. You get unlimited games for life. So we have another game called Duffleboard, which is a combination of golf and shuffleboard, and you get all of that for basically for the rest of your life.
For the life of what if I live to be like 150?
That's right. You'd still be able to get it. And there's other cool features, like if you're a member, there's a $2 off the beer day. So on members get, for example, today is like the 28th. 29th? 29th?
Yeah,
28th.
So.
I forget what day it is.
This will replay in a few weeks.
Okay, so on today, tap number 28, you'll have $2 off as a member. So
interesting. So the membership comes with discounts. So you're encouraging members, and even though
absolutely,
I mean, because I wonder about the business model, right? So you sell this membership, and there's an immediate spike in revenue, I suppose, but then anytime that person comes there, they get a play for free. What's the idea? They would bring their friends in to play with them, and you'd charge the friends? How does that work?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So bring the friends in with them. It isn't a reoccurring business model or a reoccurring revenue model as such a membership like that, but it brings people in, and also we make a we make a majority of our money off of the beer and the food.
Yeah.
So it's just an activity that people can do while they're having a good time.
But there's a loyalty too. I feel like when you're the member of a club, it feels like, man, I own a piece of this thing.
Yeah,
I need to go use my membership.
Yeah, you got to have your membership.
Okay, so
everyone should have a membership at Flat Stick Pub.
Yeah, well, there's what, 3 million people in Sacramento. What's the capacity of this place?
436 downstairs and 55 upstairs, which is something we haven't talked about yet. So it's a good transition.
The secret place. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so we had this extra space that was given us by the landlord, essentially. We had to activate the space because of a deal the Sacramento Kings had with the Promenade and the Plaza. they had to have retail space upstairs. They wouldn't allow us to just have a staircase down. They wouldn't allow us to utilize the first floor space as like an office. So we had this extra space, and it was approximately 2,000 square feet. And we're like, what are we going to do with this extra space? And we said, why don't we make a speakeasy and kind of make it a part of Flatstick? So we have an elevated membership called the Trophy Club, that if you're a member of Flatstick Pub, you can also join the Trophy Club, where you gain access to a members-only lounge, which is a true speakeasy through a trap door upstairs. You won't even see it. And you get your own private bar. You plus 3 can go in any time as a member.
That's interesting. So this is a very select group of people. So when
Yep.
you go in there, it will only be like VIP type of people, like your investors, which I happen to be
Yep.
one of, thankfully. Very proud to be a part of this. And I know I know a few of the investors, they're buddies of ours. And so you kind of go in there and hang out with almost like the VIP type crowd.
Yeah. We've got, I don't want to name drop, but there are some very successful people who are members there. So you could be hobnobbing of sorts with the hoity-toities or the Joneses in there, having a good time.
I went in there I don't think it was like the pre-grand opening where you're sort of like testing it out. What do they call that in the restaurant when you're like you do your soft
openings.
Soft openings. So I
Yeah.
went in there in the soft opening and it was great. I mean, I was hanging in there with some VIP types, but the service was great. I mean, you can up in the upstairs. Was it an open bar? I mean, because it was not just beer and wine and stuff like that. It was you could order just about anything.
Full
up there.
cocktail menu
Yeah.
upstairs plus beer and wine.
Yeah, and now downstairs, is it different? It's a lot of beers.
Yeah, downstairs is all beer and wine and craft cocktails. There's absolutely, I mean, when I say craft cocktails, pre-batch craft cocktails on draft. There is absolutely no well downstairs. It's a beer and wine bar primarily.
Okay, but upstairs, whatever you want.
Upstairs,
pretty
we've
much.
got everything from a local Golden State vodka all the way to a Louis Tray.
And so Speakeasy, walk me back through time. At one point, Speakeasies were, I suppose that every major city has a couple of Speakeasies tucked away that they're sort of like, they're almost like hidden, right? But give us the concept of what a Speakeasy is and who did you emulate, if anybody?
So speakeasies are from the 1920s, prior to the 21st Amendment being, that basically prohibited alcohol. They've made quite a resurgence of recent. I think they're very Instagrammable, social media wise. So my wife and I have had the very dear fortune of traveling many places around the world, and we've gone to some very cool speakeasies. Unfortunately, in California and in the United States, there are county health laws that they don't have in many countries. So in regards to lighting and access, where you're climbing through a laundry machine, for example, in a country to get into a space, that wouldn't fly in the United States. You have to have egress to get in and out of a space. But these things are popping up all over the world. I mean, I've been to speakeasies in Paris. I've been to speakeasies in Prague. I've been to speakeasies in Bangkok. I've been to speakeasies in Australia, ironically. But we're the first one in Sacramento. And the idea is just like it was. It's a secret bar. People aren't really supposed to know about it.
Not supposed to be drinking.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be drinking, and it's all about having a good time. The beer, the bartenders kind of choose the cocktail selections with you, get creative on craft cocktails, and do really fun stuff.
Interesting. Okay, so that to me, I think that intrigued me when you disclosed to me that might be a part of the investment or the membership or what have you. But really, I'm thinking about this business. You went into something that it's really brick and mortar, right? You went into
Very
the
brick and mortar.
restaurant business,
Yes.
the beverage business, your old business as well. It had a brick and mortar component as well.
Yeah.
Where most of society is looking for something that they can, a business they can operate from their mobile phone or from the screen, software or something. You are staying with the traditional, the brick and mortar, which is that model is it's still alive, but it's changing.
It is changing, and you have to be ahead of the curve. I'm not a fan of so I'm also an investor, I'm a member of Sacramento Angels, and I don't like companies that don't have earnings or deferred earnings. That's just not my style. I love cash flow. Cash flow for me is king, and I like businesses that are earning revenue. So I was attracted to this model because there was a barrier of entry to get into this business. It cost millions of dollars to build it. There's a barrier of entry because of a proprietary component of this business, which is the duffel board game, which is someone could copy us and create a mini golf bar anywhere in the United States, right? Or anywhere in the world, but no one can play duffel board. It's a game that they trademarked. It's a game they invented, and it's a tremendous amount of fun to play.
Sorry, I'm derailing it slightly here. What is duffel board?
So duffel board is a cross between golf and shuffleboard. It's scored in a 9-hole fashion, just like golf, but it's played on a table with a 1 shot per hole.
Okay, interesting. So
it's a lot of fun.
Okay, so derailing the business model question. So you decided, hey, you have some exclusive offerings, and so it makes it more possible. So to go brick and mortar.
Brick and mortar will always be there, right? We're not always going to look at our phones. We want an analog situation. There's actually a great book called Revenge of Analog that I recently read. And people who grew up, especially the millennials that grew up in an age with cell phones 24/7, are really looking for escapes from their cell phones. And I grew up in the age where I'm not that old. I'm 37 years old, but I'm old enough to remember when I didn't have a cell phone, and I'm definitely old enough to remember when a cell phone wasn't a smartphone and I didn't have email on it and it was a flip phone, or it was just a plain old Nokia when I was 16. But prior to that, I mean, this new generation behind us are growing up in an age where they've had a cell phone since they were far too young to have a smartphone, to be quite honest. And, they're looking for an escape from their phones. They're looking for something to do that's tangible. They want to touch and feel things instead of just touching a screen. And people will deny that, but it is... People are looking for things like that.
Well, it's interesting. You talk to people who own malls and shopping centers and things like that, and they're saying they're trying to create destinations that have experiences, and that's what you bring. You would be the perfect fit for any shopping area because you bring that experience. You're sort of the ideal tenant for a shopping district or a shopping mall, even though Doco, it's got shopping around there, but it's more of an entertainment and restaurant area.
Yeah, so that, again, the world is changing at an extremely rapid pace. I mean, I was just listening on the radio here about this new mall in New Jersey. It's supposed to be like the largest mall in the world, same company that built Mall of America, and it's a 55-45% split now. So 55% of the space in this mall is entertainment-based, and 45% is retail. And they're hoping that people will come for the entertainment and stay to shop for the shoes. That's the new model. So things to do is really important because you can get things so easily online now. You don't need as many brick and mortars when it comes to that, but we do need things like housing. And I think there's going to be some really creative plays in the mall space coming soon. Hopefully I get to be a part of some of that. It'd be a really fun business to jump into where I think malls are going to transform into some incredible spaces over the next 10 to 20 years.
Well, you have expansion plans. I know you're probably limited on what you might want to disclose today, but I know the plan is to grow. You have a large territory where you can open up more outlets. What do you envision for growth for Flat Stick?
I'm going to open as many Flat Stick pubs and serve in the communities that we service as conceivably possible. My territory currently with the group up in Seattle that owns Flat Stick Pub is Northern California. We have the ability to go work outside of, as Tipsy Putt, as an LLC, we can actually operate outside of California. There's not a non-compete in regards to us start forming something called Tipsy Putt. But then again, I really want to stay a part of the Flat Stick family. We want to grow it here, and we're hoping to get at least 8 to 10 locations over the next 3 to 4 years.
Wow, fast growth.
As fast as we can possibly do it.
Amazing. Well, in Sacramento, I mean, most of our listenership is loves our hometown, so when something cool opens up in our hometown, that's great. Just recently, it was announced that we were going to get a Major League Soccer team, which I happen to be an investor in as well, so super excited. But how the downtown area is growing and entrepreneurs are committing to these investments right here in our downtown area, what does that do for the Sacramento community?
Yeah, and for those of you guys first listening to this podcast for the very first time, or anyone understanding a little bit about Mark Haney, he is an incredible individual, and I know he references Sacramento, but I'm going to tell you, this guy's going national very soon.
Thanks,
I'm telling you, Mark. I mean, he's an absolutely incredible guy. The fact that he's also invested in the MLS team coming here with Burkle and everybody else. I mean, these are the guys that are I call them the architects of our city. I mean, people who are investing in the community. But this podcast will be listened to by a lot of people in Sacramento. It'll also be listened to people in New York City and all throughout the United States, I hope, very, very soon. But back to the original question, which is the transformation of the downtowns and the transformation of the city. Is that what you're getting to?
Yeah, I think when entrepreneurs commit to invest in their hometown, just look at it's almost like the animal spirits. The confidence builds.
Absolutely. There's a beehiving effect going on. You're seeing it with the rise in real estate costs in central cities throughout the United States. People who, grew up in the suburbs, people like myself, I grew up in the burbs. I grew up very, very far from a city. I grew up in a small town called Discovery Bay with about 4,500 people in it when I was a kid. It grew to about 8,000 people by the time I moved out of it in 2000 and went to college. But these places, I'm sorry, I love Discovery Bay, but I will never, ever live in the burbs again. Like, I love being able to walk out my door. I'm 1 block away from my phenomenal coffee shop where I get coffee in the morning. I'm 3 blocks away from 515 where I get my groceries.
Market 515.
Yeah, Market 515.
Subsidiary of Rayleigh's, yeah.
Correct. Eric's vision. The Teal's vision.
Mike Teal, yeah.
Mike Teal, sorry, not Eric.
Yeah.
I apologize. Mike Teal's vision.
Yeah.
And, that type of at your fingertips delivery and speed. And so I can have more time to enjoy just, life versus sitting in a car, and driving for an hour
commuting.
in traffic. I can never, ever do that.
Interesting. Yeah, there's a whole trend toward that, and it's cool. Which makes you, I'm going to jump back to this discussion about retail and, brick and mortar. And people out there are thinking, okay, somebody who's thinking about opening up a restaurant or maybe something that would be an entertainment spot. I mean, picking out the location is pretty important. I mean, the 3 most important things about picking out a real estate is location, 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 right?
Absolutely.
That's what they say. So that location there next to Golden One, it's a plus, I would think, when people are down there for a Kings game or an event. But what about the rest of the time? Is it still a great location?
It is a good location. I mean, here's the thing. In real estate, and especially in retail real estate, because I also own and involved in Skin Body Soul, which is, we have brick and mortar locations. You're paying for that location, meaning you're getting business from the location you're in. If you're in a highly trafficked area, you're going to have people that are called walk-in traffic, where I don't have to advertise as much online as I do if I'm out at a strip mall, let's say hypothetically in Roseville, that has low walking traffic. Right. So there's different. That's just you might save on rent, but then you're going to have to make up the difference somewhere else, and that's really where it comes down to when it comes to leasing. It is location, 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 no doubt about it. But realize that you're going to be paying for that either through in some ways a marketing expense for that higher per square foot on your rental.
So what kind of metrics do you look for? I mean, obviously you got the price per square foot on what you're going to pay, some of these kind of things. But when you say walking traffic or walk-in traffic, I mean, are there head counts or how
absolutely
do you, traffic counts?
Any good real estate agent, commercial broker is going to give you traffic counts. They're going to let you know exactly how many people are walking outside your front door. For example, where we are attached to the Golden One Center, we have approximately 1.5 million people that are going to walk right past our front door per year. Mm-hmm. There are 152 events at the Golden One Arena annually. I think in 2019, I think they're pushing for 152. I think Trans-Siberian put them over the 150 mark, which is an insane amount of events to think about. And that amount of people at 18,000 person capacity arena, I mean, those people are all going to be walking right directly in front of me. And although there are split points where they can walk from different directions, about 50% go the main entrance, which is where we are. So
well, you go to one of these events and you got a little time to kill before, or you feel like
absolutely
hanging out after, you're not quite ready to go home. Where are you going to go? You want to go somewhere fun where you can hang out with your friends. So it seems like the ultimate meeting spot before a game or hang out after an event.
And it's a great environment just to hang out anytime. I mean, it's a fun and competitive environment to hang out with your friends. We have something called Monday Night Putters, where you can come in on Monday nights and we play in a league. You get to drink some beer and have a good time with your buddies and play around for some gift cards. I mean, it's just a blast. I mean, having a fun environment matters, as well as location. I mean, you can be destination based as well, like someplace like the Kitchen, for example, here. Mm-hmm. And if you guys are familiar with the Kitchen,
restaurant.
it's and I think it's going to win a James Beard Award. I shouldn't speculate, but I've heard rumors that it's going to win a James Beard Award. And I mean, this is a place that you would never find. I mean, you drive right past 100 times if you've been there for dinner. So location matters when it comes to how you're approaching the marketing strategy of your business and if you're direct to consumer, if you're business to business, you do have to understand business a little bit to understand where you need to be in real estate.
Well, we had video stores back in the day. We had a chain of 12 video stores, and location was key. Back in the day, do you remember video stores?
Of course I remember video stores.
Have you been in a video store?
Of course I've been in video stores.
Okay.
That's the missing. I'm telling you, it's a different generation.
There was a time, my friends, that people would actually go to the video stores to hang out and meet their friends and so on. It was actually kind of a fun thing to do on a Friday night or a Saturday night. Hey, let's go to the video store and get some movies. And you would always run into someone you know and talk.
Yeah.
And but we had to have parking. They had to be also convenient. So
Yes.
it really was less of a destination. The convenience factor was super important. So always on a busy corner, so that you had great visibility and signage, so they're driving by and you almost are reminded, oh, I better get a movie, that type of thing.
And the world is changing so fast. I mean, I don't even own a car. I haven't owned a car for the past
You don't
few
own a
years.
car?
I don't own a car.
How did you get down here?
Well, my wife has a car. Sorry.
Okay.
So I borrowed my wife's car, or I rent a car.
Interesting.
But I don't own a car, and living in an urban community today is living as opposed to living 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It is unbelievable that the amount of options for transportation and the ridiculously low cost to get around. I mean, between Uber and bike shares and scooter shares and all of the additional resources we have today that we never had before, location, you're exactly right. Location does matter, but parking, for example, is not as big of a factor when you can get dropped off in an Uber and pulled away. So, for example, our location has 0 parking, and it would be almost suicidal back 25 years ago to open a bar with a capacity of 400 people, a restaurant bar, with 400 people with no parking.
That's really interesting because,
insane, right?
I mean, parking downtown is a pain.
It is.
We all know that it is, but there is a way to deal with it, right? Uber, there's obviously parking garages and so on, but I mean, I get down there. I usually, we have a limo, so we usually take our limo down there, get dropped off. So so we got to have the ride. Hey, I'm not going to drink and drive, so I got to make sure I do that. So we do live in the suburbs.
Point. If you ever learn a lesson from this podcast, don't drink and drive.
Do not drink and drive.
Very important.
So sometimes so we're educating our audience. Don't drink and drive. But so thinking about the challenges associated with entrepreneurship, and when you have a brick and mortar location, there are tenant improvements. There are different things that you sort of don't think about when you have when you're renting a space over at WeWork or here at the Haney Biz Hub, where you sort of don't worry about leases and things like that. But you get into a lease where you got to go out and rent the building, then you got to fix it up and get it right. And these present obstacles and challenges that are not easy to overcome. Thoughts, experience in that realm?
Yeah, so that's, I think, one of the critical components of why I felt so confident opening this business is from my background and having to deal with leasing situations. Back in 2005, I set up a lease with my first company was called One Source Media and Great Video. And in 2005, I set up a leasing arrangement in downtown Sacramento for 1,000 square feet. And by 2007, I was crushing it. We were doing well. We had contracts with CalPERS, Department of Education. We did video production videos for all sorts of things, everything from weddings to 30-second commercials on television that we used to do. And my company was growing. So I signed a large 2,500 square foot lease, and everyone knows what happened in 2008. So I learned the hard way of what happens when the economy shifts and you're locked into a contract with one of these
you look at your rents.
Lease.
The rents drop dramatically. Obviously, your revenues probably dropped dramatically, and so on. So, getting out of the lease, was that possible? What was the lesson?
No, the lesson learned, and this is why it funnels into what we do today and what the negotiations that go into what we did today is that I was in a decent lease. It wasn't a bad lease. It was, I think, $250 or $3 a foot. Okay. But when 2008, 2009 happened, rental rates dropped to $1 a foot. And I was also not doing well. Economically, we weren't doing well. So we're trying to work with the landlord to get out of this lease, and it was not going well with the personal guarantee that almost everyone needs to sign on a lease today. And so what you have to do is you really have to understand that you can't trap yourself. You have to really think through what you're doing when it comes to leasing. I say this statement all the time when I'm doing. I've got I'm a man of many hats, but I'm on the American Medical Spa Association's board, and I speak for the American Medical Spa Association, which is a group out of Chicago. And I talk about this all the time, that it's very, very easy to do things today in 2019, and it's very, very difficult to undo things. You can get wasted in Vegas and get married in 2 minutes, but it's very, very difficult to get out of that marriage.
Yeah.
So you have to be cautious and cognizant of what's going on in contracts, especially when it comes to leasing. And when you're dealing with a 126-page lease, it is extremely complicated. You have to really think through, and you have to say, this is a massive commitment, and I'm in it for 10 years. So back to the lease that I was discussing with One Source Media, I had this lease in place. We were not doing well, and I found a tenant to take my space. The neighbor tenant was doing okay. It was a lobbyist firm that was in downtown, and they were looking to expand their space. And it was like, I found this perfect tenant. Boom, I'm going to get out of this lease. I'm not doing well. And the landlord started negotiating with that tenant, and I couldn't be a part of that negotiation. Well, the negotiation was a lower leasing rate that the tenant had agreed to. And all of a sudden, the difference in cost between the rate that I had signed and the rate that this new tenant had signed, I had to make up the difference. So every single month for the next $75,000 for my entirety of my 3.5 years left on my lease, I had to pay that out, and I was the personal guarantee on that contract. It was a non-transferable of a guarantee. So you have to be very cautious when you do things in life today, because it's very difficult to undo them.
Well, I mean, you think about the Flat Stick Pub. You guys are going to be there for, you said 150 until I'm 150, which is like whatever. So that's 90 years or so, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So, but how long of a lease should somebody sign? I mean, so any thoughts on that? How do you decide?
It depends on the business you have and what your game plan is. If you're growing, if you're a business with 10 employees and you think you're going to grow to 20, for example, in the next 4 or 5 years, you're probably going to want to sign a shorter lease of a 3 to 5 year lease. If you're a company like ours, it's like, okay, we're going to stay our square footage. We have our footprint. We have our games. The space is somewhat modular. If something was to go sideways with golf for some reason, I don't know why it would, but I could change it to some other game because I have the space. So that way I went for a 10-year lease with 2-year options. A company like Starbucks, for example, they sign 25 years. Walgreens signs 50-year leases.
10-year lease. Is that standard, you think? I mean, I've done some leasing, and we tried for shorter term leases with a lot of options. Some other people like to lock them up longer and they basically cover themselves. What's your thought?
I signed a 10-year lease on this particular lease, and I'm going after 10-year leases. There's a few reasons why we did that, but the main reason is that I do think that lease rates are still going to continue to rise, especially in these great locations. So I'm trying to keep my rates static and consistent. So that's one of the main things. And the other thing is that I'm confident in our business. I'm very confident in our business model. So I had the confidence to go into it 10 years. And the last part about it is, if you do sign and you commit longer to a landlord is generally more apt to give you a larger percentage of tenant improvement funds that you can use for the actual build out of a project. And tenant improvement funds, for those of you that don't know, is the cash that's given to you by the landlord, essentially, that it basically can finance the construction portion of that location. So when you sign a 5-year lease, you're going to have a more difficult time extrapolating per square foot tenant improvement funds versus if you sign a 10-year lease.
Yeah, I've seen that happen where people didn't lock up. I've actually had that happen to myself. Had a lease, the lease ended, we're attempting to negotiate a renewal, and it didn't work out. So we ended up having to go find a new place, or we decided really to go find a new place versus pay the higher rent. But a competitor moved in behind us, and it ended up costing us a lot of business because we had a direct competitor move into our old space. They started getting our mail and so on, and next thing you know, they've got some of our customers. Right? So it was kind of a frustrating situation, all because we didn't lock up the space.
And like going back even further into leases, also being knowing your plan. And you can't always know your plan as an entrepreneur. Your plan's always shifting and changes, right? You're running and it's an audible in a football terms, right? You got to understand things are changing constantly. But my second business, Skin Body Soul, I was smart and I negotiated better leasing terms, and I got the attorney and we negotiated the terms and went through item by item. But I didn't know I was eventually going to sell that company or how I was going to exit that company. I never thought about my exit strategy when I started that company. It was in 2014. I just hadn't thought about it. I'd gone back into the private world. I was a medical device rep, and then I wanted to start a new company. Again, I worked for somebody else for several years, several people, and then I want to start my own company. And so I didn't have that plan in place. And because I didn't have that plan in place, when the opportunity came in and we were looked at to be purchased by another entity, we ended up in trouble again with the landlords, where they're holding us hostage on a deal.
You've the wording in your lease. You have to make sure it's transferable to the new owners.
Words matter.
Yes.
Words matter.
Yeah, and you sign on the line that is dotted, and it's gospel at that point.
It is, and the templates, you gotta deviate from those templates, and you gotta find ways to get the language that fits the model and fits what you're doing.
Yeah, sounds scary.
It is scary. It really is scary.
So I thought having your own business was fun, and especially drinktainment. What's not to love? Well, so you guys also ran into, if I remember correctly, just most recently, right? The cost of construction. We all know that it's high. There's a shortage of tradespeople, and when you have to have a change in the plan, there's change orders, and they're costly, and they're hard to get done in this environment. Talk to us about your experience in that realm.
Yeah. So throughout this project, we developed a little over 12,000 square feet downstairs and 2,000 square feet upstairs. The downstairs space was a basement. We did not have full plans on the building. We knew that the building was old. It was a former Montgomery Wards from the 1950s, and then it transformed into a
Wards. I remember those guys.
And then it was a furniture store after that, and then it was a Roostaller tasting room after that, and there was this cement foundation. Well, they drilled some holes in the foundation, which is, I'm not an expert in foundation. I've become an expert in foundation after this.
I am actually. I own a concrete company.
Yeah. So
hook a brother up. I can help
slab
you
foundation, a slab foundation, and the different types of foundations. Well, this happened to have a matte slab with rebar. And when we drilled the holes, we didn't see it. We ironically, and it's so strange that this happened, but where the drill tests were done, they hit sand below, and we're like, oh, so it's on sand, and it was about 12 inches of concrete before we hit sand, and we're like, oh, there's sand, and they drilled down deep. Well, where they had drilled is the center where our main bar is located at Flat Stick Pub.
Okay.
Below that was a former escalator pit, which we were unaware of. So they drilled right down in the escalator pit, which was just filled with sand in the 1970s and then covered with cement, because that's what they did things in the 1970s.
Okay.
They didn't rebar things or go through it. It was just they already had the rebar down there around it. So they just filled it with sand, and it was this hollow pit. So when we get to construction and we start drilling through the cement and the pipes, we hit a slab of cement that was no longer 12 inches thick. It's now 36 inches thick of cement, and it has 8-gauge rebar in it. And we're like, oh crap, what are we going to do now? Because we have to put drain pipes that basically go from one side of this building to the other to where the sub pump is. And so we ended up in a very complicated problem where we had to develop a gray water pumping system and a regular pumping system, the old pumping system, where we had to switch where the pipes were in the restroom to make just by like literally a millimeter of drop to make it so we can have that I guess, what's that called?
You've got to have flow of the water.
You got to have flow of the water. It flows downhill. I forget the gradient, right gradient for your pipes. And so we ended up having to do a $300,000 plus change order.
Oh boy.
To cut through the cement, to make the piping work, to develop this pumping system. And it was over $300,000 mistake.
And you can't turn to the owner of the property, the landlord, and say, hey, can you kick in $300,000? I guess you could ask that, but they don't, they've kind of you've got that much work into it, that much investment. You can't back out then.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, words matter. And when it came down to it, there was a clause that said after, we've done our due diligence, we've examined the space, and we've done testing, and so we're taking the building as is. And that little word, as is, can become very problematic when it comes to solving the problem. So at that point in time, I thought, okay, was this an unforeseen circumstance? Did the landlord know about this mat slab? Could they have known? Was there something that was vindictive or wrong that they absolutely there could have been? And could I maybe file a lawsuit and stop and maybe go try to get the landlord to cover part or all of this? But I didn't, and we didn't, because we looked at the numbers and we looked at the timeline, and we knew we'd be tied up for 1, maybe 2 years in a lawsuit. And even if we won,
nobody wins.
You
Yeah.
the people who win are the lawyers. And in 2 years from now, and we'd have to pay all the legal fees, and there's a chance we might lose. So, you have to run your cost analysis basically and understand, okay, is it worth us getting open and biting the bullet and making this happen, or is it worth us fighting and maybe getting out of the lease? Because that point we probably could have escaped the lease, and even the threat of a lawsuit might have gotten us out of the lease. But we had also financially invested. I mean, we had our MEPs done, our architecture done. We had invested several $100,000 at that point as well that we would have had to burn.
Wow.
And so it was actually an extremely stressful time for myself and my wife, and it was. I have the most amazing wife in the world, who, dealt with the amount of pressure and stress and lack of sleep that I had over those nights trying to figure out, do I sue, do I stop, or do I move forward, and how I'm going to do this?
Well, it's interesting because you're dealing with a very stressful situation, and it's there's a lot of stakeholders at play, and there's probably gray area, and you have to make this sort of complicated decision, and you've got a lack of sleep. I mean, what I find is if I don't sleep enough, my decision making is not as good. I mean, so luckily you had Jen, right? It's like,
my amazing wife Jennifer. But the panic attacks that I had, I could not sleep. I was nervous.
Man.
I was up all night. I was freaked out. I was thinking, okay, if we do move forward with this, I'm the one that's going to have to put this money in somehow, because we didn't have enough money in the total amount to build this thing. So I'm like, okay, we can, Jenny, my wife and I, we can afford maybe a few $100,000, but that's kind of the backup plan to what if something happens again, and then now we're out. Now no bank's going to lend to us. So what we did was we tapped a local bank here in town, 5-Star Bank.
the Entrepreneurs Bank.
They are, I want to say a huge shout out to 5-Star. They I don't want to say collateralized our assets, but they looked at us. They understood the real estate market. My wife and I are fortunate enough to own a lot of apartment buildings in Sacramento, and understood our financial conditions and where we were. And they allowed us to do a $300,000 SBA loan that we were able to obtain.
Wow.
And those are not easy to get. Took a very long time to get that SBA loan, but we got it. And we also reached out to our investors, and we asked our investors if they were willing to do some financing. So we started to put together. Once we decided to move forward, we had to put together a plan in place with options. So I had the backup plan was to go to the investors, but I was hoping not to do that at all. But we got through it, and
thank you, 5-Star Bank. Thank you, Jennifer Robinson. Thank you to those who stepped up.
It was awesome. We got through it, and also I should also mention that I did have a lot of data coming in at that time. There was a local restaurant across the way from us, Fizz, that some of our investors are invested in, and they were sharing with me some of their financials of what they were doing per square foot. By the way, with the owner's consent. No, I'm not getting inside information.
Yeah, come on.
Raymond, and I was getting an idea of what the potential was in that marketplace, and I realized, okay, my initial projections also might have been very conservative and low, so that made me feel with more confidence to move forward to overcome this.
Yeah, and you have
adversity.
these windows, right? There's a window of opportunity too. Here we have Golden One. The economy's good. Fizz is kicking
Absolutely.
butt, and it's like I got to do this. Let's just get it done. So I'm glad that you did. It is a great place to go. And so just thinking about, the entrepreneurs out there, the next guy in line, thoughts, advice, as we sort of kind of wrap up this segment, and we're going to have some questions that Brian, some audience questions that Brian will bring up in a second, but just advice as we wrap up the segment for the next entrepreneur in line, the next Brandon Robinson.
Well, I think the world has changed a lot, and you really have to try to think 3 steps ahead. Thinking forward and understanding that when you do make a commitment to something, it's a real commitment today. These contracts are not easy to get out of. So as I mentioned before, it's really easy to do things in life, and it's very difficult to undo things. So be cognizant of that. And the other thing is, don't trip over pennies trying to pick up dollars. Look at the big picture of what's going on out there in the grand scheme of things. And sometimes, for example, I'm going to go back to my medical roots days with physicians and the medical retail world that I'm from, and people get so focused on creating, for example, the dermatologist would create their own skincare line in their spa. And in reality, that skincare line is going to bring in 3 to 4% of their revenue, and they'll focus 50% of their time on it. And so realize where you're spending your time and where your time is most important to you, and just don't focus on the things that are not going to earn you the highest revenue in return. Focus on the things that are. Yeah. And for example, with Flatstick, for me, it's real estate. It's location, lease negotiations. Our operations, I need to focus on a little bit, but we have a great team that does operations. I have to trust my team. My focus needs to be on the future, how we're going to build this, develop it, how we're going to get the next location open, the next people hired, and how fast I can do it.
Wow. Exciting stuff. And a lot of takeaways there. And the one takeaway that, I think it can apply to all of us is put the right people in your life, starting with people like Five Star Bank, the right attorney or advisor or real estate person to help you, get through those contracts, make sure you can fund your dream. You got to have the right people in your life.
Absolutely. Having the right people in your life matters so much. And getting involved in the community that you're serving is so important too. That's one of the things about the brick and mortar. You do have a little bit more community engagement than you do with like a business a virtual business on a phone or on a website. Now, I'm not saying those are not great businesses. There is trillions of dollars to be made in the online space still. But realize that when you are in a brick and mortar, you do have the community to back you. You have your neighbors and people support you all the way.
Great info, Brandon Robinson. Thanks for sharing your story and joining us and providing this great opportunity for Sacramento.
Thank you.
You bet.